TST Roundtable. Today is June 18th, and we basically have subject on mandatory licensing. So, we'd like to hear your views, as well as all us big mouths over here with our views. With that being said, this is everyone's personal opinion. We're fully behind. Everyone here happens to be ASE certified, so this is in no way a knock towards ASE, but maybe it's time for something different along with ASE.
And we're not talking about just the testing, that goes along, ASE type testing. We're talking about the idea that there's, this is my concept, some accountability in who's out there repairing cars, not just a certification process for the knowledge, but a real certification process for the ability, let's say. Proven ability, not just taking tests,
So
but actually being able to do it.
Hands-on testing.
Some kind of certification based on reality and out there.
And we have done that through TST.
Right.
With, not
electrical,
only
electrical.
Mainly.
And we've seen some major problems.
So since I'm easily the most opinionated guy here, okay, maybe not easily, but here's my opinion. I think, of course, it would be a tough sell, but if we could have some kind of licensing, if it needs to be that, some way that the public would be assured of a certain level of quality, then theoretically, hopefully, we could get more money for what we're doing, and because of that we could attract better people in the industry, and that would make it easier to get more money for what we're doing.
Well, especially here in New York, in our state, a haircutter or hairstylist has to be licensed.
That's right.
Plumbers have to be licensed. Electricians, as my friend always tells me, says, you need the lights on in your building. So you know what? You're going to pay me what you have to pay me. And that's going to be somewhere upwards for an hour, about $160, $170 an hour. If you don't do that, you don't get the lights turned on in your building. So one thing I don't want to see with licensing is something like we had with the air condition license.
A rubber stamp.
You remember the rubber stamp R12? Basically all it did was make some companies money for giving some testing out. And what did it do? It put the responsibility on all of us letting refrigerant out or buying a refrigerant or any refrigerant leak. Who got the fine? We got the fine. Meanwhile, the consumer can go and buy it elsewhere.
Right.
So that's a Mickey Mouse law and a poor-ass license. So, when you think about licensing, that's what we need to kind of focus on.
That's my opinion.
I bet we have tons of questions and comments, don't I? Yeah.
Now, the other part of my opinion is, in order to have licensing, you have to have some structure. And that means, to me, it means you can't just go to a school, whether it's a low level or, a BOCES in New York, we have BOCES trade school, or a UTI type of a higher level school, and then be thrown out into the workforce. I think you need to have some type of an apprenticeship program with some type of accountability for that, some kind of steps, so that when people get to the end of that process, A, they actually do know what they're doing, and B, the public has some assurances of what they're getting.
Well, the apprenticeship program like we have here in this state, at least, I can't speak for others, but for plumbers,
right,
for electricians,
like that.
Journeyman type stuff.
Yeah.
And Pierre and I sit on that BOCES board. It's a high school trade program for the rest of the country out there. And what we've seen, there are some good kids, but they can easily get lost. They need the real world,
right,
the real world experience on actually being in a shop and working.
And some of those kids don't stay in the business because they don't see the ladder. They don't see the path to a career.
Well, looking at that career, and something I did years back for SAE called Life After Wrenching, I like to throw that into the mix here. Life After Wrenching, when I presented that paper, I had 12 of my friends, from Mark Warren to Larry Gage, who invented the smoke machine, and many others. We were the fortunate guys that were able to get out of wrenching every day. For everyone out there that gets the water dripping down their back or in their eye, and cuts and bruises and burns, that's the real world. how many people really get out there to be a writer, an instructor? You know, we're the fortunate guys. That's why I call those guys my fortunate dozen. Now, with that being said, you know, we do need some sort of better structure or licensing that brings us to a higher level where the guy is seen equal from one shop to the other. Unlike now, the $59.95 brake job, and I think you guys out there in California, there's some rule about advertising that or whatever, if I'm not mistaken. You can chime in at any point. But here, you could have the $59.95 brake job, and meanwhile, to do the brake job properly, it may be $200-300.
Or in my case, it might be $800 or $900.
Well,
some of the cars I worked on,
exactly.
or more.
Yeah. In fact, the BMW deal, I won't mention the dealer, but there's a BMW dealer. When I was working in Massachusetts last week, I bumped into the Pro Cut guy. He said their average four-wheel brake job was over $1,800.
Well,
I can see that.
You're talking about a set of pads for $186.
Yeah, you know,
Right.
rotors,
Right.
but with the Pro Cut, they were able to get the price down somewhere in the $1,000 range or less, about 8-something range, which was more palatable to plenty of people that maybe
It's a
didn't
big,
need new
it's a
rotors.
big difference. Big
So,
difference.
we're not comparing apples to apples, and when it comes on with licensing, you know, we need something that really is not going to be a BS thing, because sometimes, even with all the certifications I have, I've seen the kids come out of school, they don't know how to do a valve adjustment or run a particular machine, whatever the case may be, and yet they have the same damn certification as I have.
Right.
And they didn't put the years in.
Right. See, that's the other thing. That's why I like the idea of some kind of a stepped program where the public and the industry knows who's got what at what point. Because you have to be able, you know, talking about it is one thing. Being able to do it is quite the other. And the only way to know that somebody can do it is by having them do it.
And there are a lot of people who are very good at taking tests.
Right.
I think safety is the main important thing here. Is when you're talking about working on the car, we have the capability of really, literally hurting somebody if we don't know what we're doing. Not only people that work in the cars, it's the other car you're going to hit or multiples. So you know what? Put in the fact of making sure you're doing the job right and putting these regulations into effect. I think that's where the main nut and bolts come from, of making sure the customer is satisfied and is
And being safe.
And protected.
feels he's taken care of the right way if you have the type of licensing. When you go to a dealership, you're a tech there. You can't work on that car unless you are certified in that particular item of the car.
And maybe that particular model too.
If you don't have certification, their certification, not the TST, you're not allowed to work on that particular part of the car per warranty issues. Even after the fact, if something happens, it comes back to the dealership. They are responsible for that work that's been done to that car. So I think it's very important to put some kind of effect of licensing to a technician, put some little more sphere on if they do something wrong, for say, so the customer and your boss, or even if I'm the boss, then I know that job's been done right.
Well, it would definitely be nice to know, like, you know, Pierre said and what you stated, that someone has gone through some real world steps to get there. And obviously, everyone makes mistakes. We've all made mistakes.
That's
But
how
at
we
least-
learned. I learned
right.
a lot from mistakes.
At least you got someone that really went through training and, as you said, just didn't study for a test. Was the real world type of hands-on guy.
And you know something, you know, we talk about ASE. When I went through all the ASE tests fairly recently, but because I've done these, you know, the real work for a long time, I went through the tests in like a third of the time as some other people. One of the ways you can tell how somebody really understands something is how quickly they can actually run through the material accurately with good results.
Well, but that all depends. I was just doing some classes up in Massachusetts, and some of the guys in my class were 64, 65, and in fact, I want to bring this up to ASE, Tony Mola and Tim Zirkle. They felt like they needed a little more time. Now, I took the online, computerized test. I thought they were just fine for time. But I guess all of us are different, and maybe they don't have as many computer skills.
Uh,
So for them, maybe
that's
it's
a
a
problem.
little different.
Right, yeah, that's a problem. People who have trouble with computers.
Yeah, because these guys passed, you know, L1s and A1
Previously.
through
Before.
Yeah.
you know,
On
like this,
paper.
but you had 4 hours. Now you are limited when you go in that room.
Right.
But again, that's a whole
Right.
different ballgame. Let's talk about licensing, and I think we have some
Anybody
questions.
have?
Two different levels, shop license and tech license needs to be addressed.
Okay,
Oh,
so,
very good.
2 different levels. The question or comment was shop license. Well, we have a cockamamie license here in New York. I'm not sure how good it is. I mean, I was a shop owner for years. They basically had your home address and information, and I gotta tell you, I think they just collect the fees, and I'm not in the business of, haha, New York State, you can't get me anymore. But I don't think it was a good license where they checked out, you know, what equipment do you have? If you say
I
you're
don't
doing
think
brakes, do you have equipment to work on brakes?
Well, I guess California is pretty good about that, right? Don't they? Doesn't
has
California require some of that
good
stuff?
stuff, and please, anyone from California.
Yeah, maybe you can chime in if you're in California.
I don't think
Licensing
that-
for technicians, again, I think it's a phenomenal idea, if it's done right.
Right.
And it can't just be, I wouldn't mind spending extra money to say, hey, if you're working on this front end or this transmission or whatever, you have to perform this task.
And you
I
have to
know-
have these credentials.
Right. Or you've done so much work in whatever.
Right.
Right.
But there has to be something to back up what you're supposed to
And
be doing.
they need to be uniform.
Exactly.
Can't have
Uniform
ones-
guidelines.
Yes, no, not from, not the, well, this is the deal in New York, and that's the deal in Massachusetts,
Right.
and that's the deal somewhere else. They need to be.
Right.
I don't know, I would believe, I could be wrong, but I believe the electricians.
Actually, electrical code is very, very variable.
It does
And
change, right?
it does
Right,
change.
right.
And actually,
Well,
that's one of the
I didn't
weaknesses
say
with
about-
electrical code.
Well, I didn't say the code, but I meant the procedure to be either a journeyman electrician, a union electrician.
Oh, that's probably the
I-
same.
That's what I'm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean,
Or a
years-
plumber, or
They are-
their thing to go through their apprentice, journeyman.
What we are talking about today, they are still talking about in that business. And I think they're trying to get them more standardized for these reasons.
Well,
Same
you
exact
know,
thing.
years back, I'll give you an instance. The union that I was in years back was operator engineers. That's something that operates cranes and bulldozers and everything.
Equipment.
And you had to get, number one, go to training from the union. Number two, get real on-job training. You had to shadow someone. And you didn't get your union book fully and get in there until you put all this time in.
Right.
I know my brother-in-law, who was in the construction business, did through the carpenter union. He went to school for years and was a journeyman before getting up to being a full union member. I mean,
Right.
that's how they did it.
But once you got that union book, was it good in the 50 states?
And I don't know.
Okay.
I can't speak.
Probably only good in that union, which
Where, well, that
may not be
local.
this, yeah,
Right,
that
and then it
local,
went
right.
there, I got
Yeah.
you.
But here's the big question that I'll put out there to everyone. You know, we're bringing up all these things about licensing and so on, but what can we really do to move this thing to the next step? So I want you to think about that.
Right.
What can we really do to bring this to the next step? You know, for years this has been talked about, how many years, right?
We in the industry, you mean?
Yes.
Right.
What can we do? What ideas do we have to say to the powers to be, hey, we need this?
Now,
Because
Now, that's the next important, which level power to be do you want to go?
well, see, it's all scary. Let's
That's
look,
of course, yes,
let's
none of
look
them
at
are
the
good.
OEs. You think the OEs really care? Some of them are even pulling away, it looks like, from ASE.
right.
Yes.
They
You know?
don't. They don't want another level of something that's going to cost them more money.
They don't want, who's their customer? Who's the
Somebody
OEs?
making comments there or questions?
They're talking to each other.
Who's the OE's customer is the dealership, correct?
Right. And they have their own training. They have their own system.
CBTs.
And how hard do they want to put a top-notch guy in the dealership?
Well,
Because do they
more-
want to pay big money?
More than that, they don't want, part of their perception, when you think about it, is the industry. They think that by keeping their guys certified to their standards and not the rest of the industry, that gives them a leg up. If the rest of the industry gets a leg up by being better
Equal,
trained,
perceived even
now
as
all of a sudden that's more competition for them. They don't want that.
You know, and it's really, we're in a tough business. One thing, you know, hats off to ASE for many things, is the only thing we got for certification. But even when you go to write a test, and I've done that multiple times, at least they get people from different companies, different dealerships, aftermarket guys, instructors,
Different parts
so
of the
on,
industry. Yeah.
which kind of makes it fair.
Right.
Now, you got to think about that, what you got to do for licensing to make it fair for everyone.
Right. And different people perceive things differently.
Right, because when you're talking the dealership level, you're talking, well, they could be multiple, you're talking 1 or 2 car lines, most cases. Now things are so different from make to make, domestic to import. Now you're gonna have something, the one guy says, well, how are you gonna get that field level?
Right. Now, let's say, you know, I just had an article that I was doing for some state, let's say. And with their technical people that sit behind a desk, never work on a car, I was talking about doing a voltage drop on a diagnostic link connector. And what they did, they looked up in, whether it be factory information or all data, one of them, they looked up and said, oh, you should only do resistance check, that's good enough. And I said, stop. You know, you're not loading the circuit, it's not real. So this is the same problem we could have here even with licensing.
Yeah.
Trying to get everyone on the same page to say, yeah, when a car is new, you do an own check on stuff. You get, oh, well, crap, you know you got an open. You get something else, you're pretty much in the ball game, right?
Right.
But the real world is we do current ramping, we do voltage drops, and that's just an example.
And we see a little bit of salt here in New York, you know, and salt does wonderful things to wiring, amongst other things.
Now,
Chassis grounds.
we gave you guys a bunch of food for thought.
We got a bunch of comments here.
Okay.
Continued training, certification, hands-on testing by certified instructors that can give a pass or fail in grade. If a tech fails 3 times, they will be barred from working at an ASE shop or credential. It's pretty good there. Okay, how do you handle government stuff of lowering standards anytime you get complaints from
That's
people?
another quagmire.
Yeah, right.
So government
They're
standards.
talking about lowering standards when you start getting the government involved. And see, there's the other half. What we were just saying up till now was the idealistic, what we'd love. Now we're starting to get into the realistic, what we probably will see.
There's another one, you know, our industry is not unified.
Right.
And, you know, even unions, at least here in New York, we have Teamsters Union.
Yeah.
So, and that's in very few shops, at least that I know of in New York City. I worked in one years back. But how do you unify something, you know, where our industry is so fragmented? Dealer guys,
It is.
installers.
It is.
You know, you got a bunch of different people, aftermarket guys like
Right.
ourselves.
Absolutely.
How do you do that?
And they're dealing
So
with
good
different
stuff
market
there,
segments.
Russell.
I mean, really, the dealers work with more new vehicles. We work in the aftermarket. We deal with older vehicles, but a lot of times it starts to split into different brands. You know, European, Japanese, American, or you know, whatever, something like that. SUVs, or you know, whatever. There's a whole lot of different ways you can separate. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, trucks, heavy.
Right,
Yes,
but specific vehicles.
start to be very specialized.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to unify us.
Right.
I don't know that I have an answer to that.
Yeah, and you know, the other thing
Part of what
is,
TST is about, by the way.
yeah, you know, one of the things TST, unlike other associations that are for shop membership, we're really about the technician.
It's in our name,
You know.
technicians.
And we really care is one of the reasons why we even do this.
Yeah.
Even with the bad sound we had before, we try to fix it.
Right.
We try everything. I mean, we're trying a new service here
Not
tonight.
licensed.
But licensing is something that we got to think about, and without maybe a unified body, how do you get to that step? That's what I really like to hear from everyone. How do you think you get there? I mean, you know, some of the guys are talking about consumers weed people out. We already have that. Consumers get
doesn't
screwed
really
a couple
work.
of times. It doesn't work. You know, we have a lot of problems here.
But that's not really happening either, because if that was the case, there'd be these fly-by-nights would be closing in droves, and they're not.
No, that's correct.
They're not. So
No,
that's-
consumers, the problem is an educated and a particular consumer, somebody who's really into it, might, if everybody was like that, you might be able to drive the marginal people out of business. But the fact is, vehicles are so complicated that the consumers are lost too.
Well, the really only licensing there really is emissions stuff, emissions repair.
That's correct.
You have to be licensed to do any kind of emissions repair.
Yeah, and that's not in all.
That's not true in.
Well, it's not in all states, not in our state.
Right, we
But
have
it
none
is,
of that.
but it is
We have
in
no
Connecticut.
license.
Right.
Now,
And it
you know,
certainly is in California. California has the most proactive, I think, regulations on the entire industry, and
No, it always have. I will
and
say.
they've had, well, always, but since the '60s.
Right.
And so the question is it better in California? And anybody out in California, is it better the way you've got it set up? And
or is it the same problem we have here and everywhere else?
yes,
Right.
that's the question.
And
Maybe we're on the wrong track.
we'll wait to get some answers there, but we have here something from Bruce. Would we need different levels of licensing, basically based on areas of expertise, suspension, transmission, body?
I would think so.
And I would think that would be good. Some guys would just be an electrical
Right.
Example.
certification, or someone would be in brakes, or maybe someone can get all of them.
And then let me throw this little thought out, because I've been saying this for years. Doctors band together in medical groups, and they have specialties, but they're in the same group.
And we
Why
have
not technicians banding together in mechanical groups,
Yeah.
where we have specialties, but we're in a group, and we can share expenses and have more leverage?
Now, here's something with Russ, and I sort of agree, but I brought this idea at multiple times to ASE. Why reinvent the wheel? Shouldn't we work with ASE to put more teeth in their testing program?
Wouldn't that be nice?
But they'd have to get into some sort of licensing, not just testing.
Right.
I mean, again, I think ASE is great, and I think we should continue to utilize it. I think it's good for our industry, but there's that next step.
And there's other parts of it. There's the training that we do, and there's also the, like we mentioned in the beginning, the idea of apprenticeship, the experience building, let's call it.
The bottom line is the state's got to set it up, period.
Right,
Because otherwise,
State or federal.
Unless you have a state representative that's going to implement that, it's never going to happen. I mean,
right,
unless-
because
unless
until
it's
someone
serious-
can't go to work somewhere because they don't have the thing, it's not really going to mean anything.
That's it.
Right.
I mean, it's good for the customer base. I mean,
Yeah.
the customer's going to trust you more, and they're going to feel more
But
safe going to your
if
shop.
they don't see it, that won't push it. The
Yeah,
customer
and-
has to see it.
And here's something
They
that,
haven't seen it
here's a
yet.
comment from Gonzo. After all these years I've been in biz, more and more customers are looking for price than
Right.
anything
Yeah.
else.
That's true.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Big problem.
Gonzo,
And-
absolutely.
And they don't know about, first of all, they wouldn't know good quality from bad quality unless it really bit them. The wheel fell
No,
off.
unless they found it on the
The
internet.
brake shook so bad that the windshield cracked.
Yeah, and he has here, they go to a shady shop just because they don't want to charge, they don't charge for diagnostics, but that doesn't really fix the problem. And when they come to you as the second person they have to pay, now they're cranky at you because they
Right.
wasted money
Oh,
elsewhere.
for sure.
Right.
Sure.
But that's another reason why we need licensing, shop licensing, and technician licensing, so maybe we're all on the same page rather than be so
Now,
far away.
that really only works if there's some penalty for the shops or the technicians that burn people a lot.
Sure.
Yeah.
That only works if there's a penalty.
Yeah.
Like Jerry said before, some teeth.
The
Yeah.
biggest penalty is the customer coming back.
Now, the biggest penalty is not
Well,
being able to
then-
get new customers.
Then another thing you're gonna have to address, if you wanna talk about diagnosis, what are you gonna do with the parts houses that, scan, don't do free diagnosis?
I'll check
That-
that
They're
out.
gonna have to be
Technically, that's
certified.
not a diagnosis. Reading codes,
It's a guesstimate.
Yeah.
you're reading a code.
But I mean, is that,
Right now,
where
I'll put it up.
are those people gonna fall in this?
Not bring the
I mean, I can
They're
read the
saying-
menu to a restaurant online, but I don't really know if the food's any
They
good.
get a
They're
code like
saying,
that.
they're saying here's the code, we got the parts.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
Yeah.
Now we have someone here, Myron, and this guy I'm thinking of, California Sucks, also just talked to their people. So in other words, maybe, we see things from the other coast.
And we think it's all good.
We
We
think
think you
it's-
got it right.
Yeah, we think you got it right, but I guess there's problems everywhere, isn't there?
Right.
Sure.
So, thanks
And
for
really
that
what it
input.
comes down to is, can you attract, beyond this, can you
Oh.
attract good people in the industry? And if you attract good people, you're gonna do a better job for the customers.
But who is being attracted? We can only speak here.
Right.
We don't see many young people being attracted into this business because there's not a standardized type of pay scale that you can get.
Yeah, they don't see the future.
Whether it be starting
A ladder.
out or being a master tech, it's all over the board.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get guys that'll make $125,000 a year. You'll get some guys make as low as $20,000 a year.
And
Right.
the investment is huge.
And they have to buy
Personal- The
tools.
personal investment.
Right.
Now, here's something you guys will get a chuckle out for David. Just not sure I want Obamacare for cars.
Well, see, there's,
That's a little pitfall that I mentioned before.
right.
Just like the AC license. Is it going to be a bullshit game
Yeah,
or not? And excuse my French.
yeah.
And you're French, Pierre, so you can talk about it.
Yes. Well, that wasn't the word I would have used. But anyway, the bottom line is, yes, that, I took business classes years ago. And one of the first lines in business is, government is bad business. And what that means is, if you're gonna make business decisions, the government is the last place to go for it. And so when we say, kind of saying there ought to be a law or we ought to have this, we have to also temper that with the knowledge that the reality is it may not work out. Probably
Right.
won't.
And we have something here from Scott. It looks like in California, $200 buys you an ARD license, auto repair dealer, and you don't have to prove anything. So it's very similar to
To New
here.
York.
$200 you
Yeah.
buy a license and you don't have to prove
But we
a
pay
thing.
more here.
Yes.
What a ripoff.
Right?
What's that green sign cost in New York, Jerry? I don't remember.
Oh,
I don't
years
remember
ago, it
either,
was
but it's
three.
a lot of money.
It was over 3-something years ago.
I have
But
one
I
of
mean, all
my...
it is money. No one comes to look, so you can put that
No,
green.
that's correct. I
green
still have
sign
one
on
in
the
my
shed.
garage. You know, my old one still sits on the side of my garage from my old shop.
Yeah, I hear you.
I have garage
Now-
at home.
Gonzo has here, if the consumer knew the value of ASE, they might look at things differently. Now-
You know, that's true. If the consumer
Yeah,
really
right.
understood what ASE is, they might demand it more.
But since 1972, when it was NIASE, and I could tell you having Blue Seal shops, I basically put stuff, even in my logo, I got permission from NIASE, and then when it turned to ASE, I had pamphlets and flyers for my consumer, always, told them that we had ASE certified guys, but we still had an issue. The issue was everyone went for price.
Right.
I don't think the consumer gives a rat's butt. I do think if it's not a license, like the example I gave, my electrician buddy. You can't get the lights turned on in your building if you don't use a licensed person. And I would think most electricians are up, at least in our area, at about the same price. You're not going to have someone doing some cutthroat type of cheaper. You may get it a little cheaper, but it's not going to be the $59.95 brake job versus the 300 plus.
The electricians or plumbers also have a code that they have to work to. And we don't have a code,
Correct.
a quality code, that we have to work to.
It isn't our code even. It's the plumber's code. It's the county code, the town code.
Right. There is no code that a vehicle has to be repaired to.
The code for a mechanic is supposed to be put back to factory operating condition, period.
Right.
Yeah, but it's not the law.
Oh,
It's not the law. It doesn't have to be
no
done.
one comes and checks.
Right. No one
no.
checks. This quality is pretty
Now,
poor.
some states require, they have safety inspections and they require certain things to be returned, not necessarily returned to factory condition, but certainly there's a range, a deviation that's allowed. Some of them even don't allow things like holes in bodywork or whatever, rust type stuff.
Yeah, I
But
can't do like that.
But I remember when I lived in New Hampshire years ago that they were absolutely, in Massachusetts I think is like that,
Yeah.
big on, because they have so much salt, they were big on not having holes in cars. The idea being that you could physically walk against or rub near that car and slice yourself, But also it's a structural thing.
Well, you like
But without a mechanical code,
yeah.
what are we repairing things to? To what level?
Well, that's it. And look at the different quality of parts out there as well.
Well,
See, that's
part
a
of the
whole
return
different
to the
ballgame.
quality thing.
Absolutely.
You know,
Repaired.
they don't even, there's not even a little rule on that. I mean, there's brake standards, let's say. You know, we all see stuff on the top of a brake pad or brake shoe on the side. But how many of these things can we really believe today with so many knockoffs from foreign countries? Including, we just did, Pete Meyer and myself.
Refrigerant.
We just did the stuff and had Peter Cole from Neutronics on. And how much fraudulent stuff is coming in and being mixed. Well, don't you think brake parts and other parts, mass airflow sensors and so on, just like our taxi and limousine commission, they made that major bus, things that were in OE boxes, from Delco, from Motorcraft, from Mopar.
Looks good to us.
All fake stuff.
And that's a problem beyond licensing. That's a problem that not only our industry, but pretty much the whole country and every business has to deal with.
Distribution
And wow, how do you
Police
how do you
and-
know? You just spent time diagnosing something. You bought a part that you thought was the right thing, the good thing. You put it in. Now you have a problem. You're the one who's wearing that problem. The customer thinks you don't know what you're doing. And in reality, you've been
License
shafted.
really should be across the whole board.
You got shafted, but that kind of thing would be, so totalitarian it would never work.
So, do you think something like some sort of a license that ASE can pick up, and then so many hours a year of hands-on type of training, similar to what we tried to get through the STS board through SAE?
Yes, something. The idea there is that there's a requirement, at the very least, a recommendation for X number of hours of hands-on training a year. Or I guess you could probably even just require training, but hands-on is the key. If you don't know people can do stuff, you have no way of knowing if they're up to the standard.
It would have to be hands-on testing.
Hands-on testing and hands-on, right, hands-on testing,
Yeah,
right.
hands-on
Now,
testing.
We also have a comment here from Lou a while back. He says he agrees with me. I work in a tech school and we lose a lot of talented students to other trades because of starting pay due to licensing.
There you go.
And you know one guy that used to work for me,
That's correct.
Chris, went
Yes.
into his own welding business
And he
after I
won
closed my shop.
competitions. He
Oh.
won mechanical. He was a mechanics student to be a technician, and he was winning the competitions, and he's not in the industry.
Yeah.
Now the other thing is, I've seen this recently in the last few places I've been at. People who are maybe the most capable in the industry not being paid or respected well enough to stay in the industry. Things happen and they go into other industries because that was part of what I was talking about in the beginning, that bootstrap. If you have higher quality and higher pay and higher respect, let's call it, you're going to attract and keep better people, and that's going to be easier to bootstrap yourself up to a better level. Tough to do.
The
That's-
biggest thing is to get the consumer to recognize this. The problem,
yeah, that's the hard part.
like
That's it.
Gonzo said,
Again.
to this day, the perception of 99% of the people
It's all
is
about
that
the money.
Money.
because the other guys is charging a lot of money, is raking me because your average, under average person can make the repair.
Now, here's
Right.
another thing another good comment here by Gonzo. Parts are the big difference between our trade and the medical field. Too many places to buy crap and try to do an A1 job.
Right.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very
I
true.
mean, it all comes down to the part. If the part fails,
Well, there's
your
Well,
name.
there's also procedure in doing something.
yes. Like how many people, when they do brake jobs, even when they change discs, make sure that the hub is clean? You can put a perfectly clean or perfectly true disc on a rusty hub, and you're never ever going to get that thing to be true. That's just one example, but it's that idea. And parts, if you have a clean hat or a clean bearing, and you have a disc that's warped, you're never ever going to get rid of that vibration. If it's garbage metallurgy, even with a Pro Cut, you're still not going to get it to stay true. Because it's going to be true today and warped tomorrow.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yep.
Now we have here from Jerry. I had all ASEs in the early 80s. Didn't mean a thing compared to now. And I'll say it again. Anyone can read an ASE book and get a patch, but not knowing what to do or knowing about the industry is a problem.
Well, that's what we
Yes.
say, yeah.
Yeah, that's really what
So
we were
we
being.
agree.
Well, I don't know if you could hear that there, but basically what it was Jerry. He said is, you can have the patch and take the test and get a good score, good grade on it, but if you don't know what to do, that's the problem.
Absolutely.
And so that's where we're coming from.
And I
here.
find that all the time out in the field.
Yeah, me too.
And Bruce brings up a good point here. Look at all the messed up wiring that comes into a shop. These repairs, can they pass any type of code?
That's Richie Shorts right there. He sees those every day.
Every day.
Richie's the wiring guy.
And me, in this new capacity of this job I've had for the last few months, I'm seeing it, every week anyway.
There's something here about MAP. I'm not sure if you guys all know what MAP is, Motorist Assurance Program.
Oh, yes,
It's
right.
basically all the big box stores, the Goodyears, the Midases, Firestones, you name them, all of those type of guys, Meineke. They have a set of standards to where it tells someone when this thing should be replaced, repaired, or what the procedure is like. Who knows, sometimes these things are put together by these big industries to protect themselves, but it may be a good starting point to where possibly it brings some sort of a standard to what a technician needs to do or know.
The concept being you have criteria for when you would or would not replace or repair things. I think that would be an important part of it should be part of our industry already, a base criteria, recommendations. But we can't even as an industry agree on that.
No. And
Right?
I'm sorry about the delay in getting back to some of these questions, but we have so many questions or comments that it's pretty tough to keep on. But here's another one from Scott. Perhaps we could look to the insurance industry. Shops are required to hold garage keepers' legal liability, and perhaps they could help to drive higher standards. I'm sure insurance companies pay out a hell of a lot for mistakes that people make from not putting oil in a car,
Right.
to
Absolutely.
doing some other problems.
Right. And it's much bigger when somebody gets hurt, obviously. That's where it really goes crazy.
Right. Then you buy them
But
out.
of course, they're not going to regulate everything,
No.
the insurance companies.
And
No.
here's something from Rod that's pretty damn good. As much as I hate government regs, which I
Yeah.
think we all do,
Yeah,
I
me
think
too.
they mess stuff up. They seem to work in areas of emission testing and forcing people to get their cars repaired to a certain standard by a shops that are licensed and regulated with oversight.
Yeah.
Well, that's only because of the U suck light. The U suck
That's right.
light, the check engine light.
The middle light.
If the mill light is on,
Yeah.
if someone sucks at fixing this thing, whether it's using crappy parts or whatever, if you
Or
can't
poor
get,
procedures.
right, or poor procedures,
Yeah.
you can't get the light out, I don't know how long the customer's going to come back to you.
Yeah.
So, maybe that's one way. Maybe you need a you suck light on brakes and everything else.
That's tough to do.
It is tough to do,
Right,
but
Yeah.
But that would,
Because some of it becomes this,
it's not doable,
how
but
big
it
of a
sure
brake
would be
shake
nice.
is too big of a brake
no,
shake.
it's not doable, Bear, you're right. It's not doable because of so many systems on a car.
Right.
But it gets you thinking,
Yeah,
if you could get something like that and go for the standard, like how many people can't get this light out or get a monitor running because they have no clue.
Right.
And the bottom line is the consumer's only going to go there so many times before they go, this guy doesn't know what he's doing.
Then they've already just paid a whole bunch of money to not
That's
get
right.
it fixed.
Right.
That's out there. That's out there.
Huh?
And that's out there.
Flat
Yes, it's out
rate.
there a lot.
Well, I want to throw something out there too, Peter. Well, it's all good and well, but do you think any of what we're talking about has any merit in New York State, because that's where I am and the only one I'm familiar with, means anything in a state where you can become a registered repair shop in New York State
By buying a license.
And the basis, I could be wrong, but as far as I know, the only requirement is to have to give them X amount of license for the green sign and your number. And I don't know, there may be a few other small, but it isn't.
That's about the size of it.
A minimum
Yep.
tool requirement.
Nope, there's
a
none of
minimum
that.
training requirement.
Nope, none of that.
So as long as someone can
Well,
do
that would have to be part of it.
yeah,
I think we go
but
back
without
and think.
that being addressed,
That would have to be part of it.
The rest is.
But,
the rest is
Well, how about
meaningless.
this question I have now from Gonza? Would you mind someone coming in your shop and inspecting your shop for quality or not?
I wouldn't have a problem with
I
that,
wouldn't- I don't know.
but I know a lot of people who would.
Depending on who the someone was. I mean, if the someone was qualified, no.
Now, on the other hand,
Well,
There-
that brings up a good point.
there'd have to be
Right,
some
Does
type
this
of appeals
person-
process, because if it's
Right.
someone who just has his hand out, that's a different story, and there've been many abuses of inspectors in other industries
Correct,
over a
correct,
long
yes,
period of
where, right,
time.
where you wanted with the.
There has to be,
Credentials.
not just credentials, there has to be accountability, there has to be
Yeah.
somebody above the somebody.
And, you know, Russell brings something here, continue education is the key.
Yeah.
But continue education, even though TST, we supply seminar-based training, that puts a clue in someone's head,
Right.
and it's for the seasoned technician. But I think even a lot of people that are seasoned sometimes need the hands-on.
Oh,
How many
absolutely.
people we
Right.
know,
Absolutely.
without mentioning names, in our TST group, as members and stuff, we know for years, you give them a lab scope, they
I
can't
don't know
work
what
it.
to do. Or
You
even
give them
meter.
certain scan tool or
Even basic
meter,
electrical.
Yeah.
they
so-
can't,
yeah.
they can't do it.
But-
We tested that out.
And you know, even beyond that, even the ones who maybe knew stuff once upon a time, you get, we all do, I know I do, we all develop bad habits, we get lazy, or maybe something, you know, gets a little, you know, see the gray hairs, you get a little rusty there every once in a while.
Well, you got gray hairs, I got lack of hairs.
Lack of hairs. So, it's not bad to review, I guess, being able to review hands-on. Maybe what we really need is to have some kind of clinics for ourselves as
Yeah.
part of that process where correct, good procedures can be actually, you know, gone through in a hands-on fashion.
Now, here's another thing here from Lou. One of the restricting trades, like electrical, has a ratio of techs to apprentices. For example, one tech could only have 2 apprentices. And
Okay.
that's a good point.
That's
on
a good
them. So,
idea.
you know, I think, you know, having more than that, having run shops and sometimes breaking in young guys, there was an issue if there were too many people.
Right, too many
You know-
people who weren't trained enough to be able to do stuff on their own.
Right. You need a guy that can shadow a master. Shadowing a master is going to make this job a lot easier.
Right.
Or the process, I should say. I do like this other idea here too. Some shop inspections, it could be an A, B, C, or D. Well, hey, our New York City, to go in a restaurant, they rate them.
They rate
and
the
people
restaurants.
come in and check them. You could appeal it, but if your restaurant is doing, you know, keeping everything clean, it's a health department, A, B, C, or
Oh,
D.
absolutely, yeah.
And then there's something like even Zagat that
Right.
has the Zagat rating,
Yeah.
and consumers go for that. We almost need a Zagat rating
An automotive Zagat rating.
that would have to state you need X amount of training a year, or you got to prove yourself, which is maybe a different form of licensing. What do you guys think about that?
That's a good idea.
Right. Was it, that again
Who's
puts
gonna
it
do
back in the
organization? How do you appeal?
Right. I mean, that's similar to if ASC had meaning to the consumer, or more meaning, or enough meaning, that's similar to what you're talking about. So,
So I really like to hear your comments out there now about that, like a Zagat type of thing, because we did hear putting the government into it, and we know, you know, someone put like Obamacare for auto repair.
Yeah.
Well, we definitely don't want that. I mean, at least my opinion. I know the government can muck stuff up. We did that already with R12 licensing.
Right.
But what do you think about something that kind of forces someone almost out of looking bad, not having the quality shop because you're not getting the 20-something Zagat rating, and if you get a 30, you're pretty much
Well,
up there,
public
guy.
opinion's very strong.
You're
It
talking
can
like,
be.
you're talking like a system like Angie's List for auto.
Well, Angie's List is more of a referral service,
Right.
You don't get good referrals if you,
but
it also gives you bad.
you don't have
referrals,
to be
doesn't
on it. You know, you're only on it if you're looking for something.
Right.
This is more of a everybody's on it,
Yeah.
or everybody's rated by it.
Yeah,
Right.
Bruce says Zagat is a consumer rating. Yeah, I know that, Bruce. And Yelp is a review. But I'm talking someone from Zagat, they come in and check the restaurant.
Right.
You know, there
But
needs to
see,
be some
here's the
sort of
issue with
quality
that.
thing, and we
How
do
would
thank
they
you for
check
that
auto
comment.
repair when it's such a complex field?
Yeah, you need some.
Right,
Right.
and which
But what's-
element of it?
But
Yeah,
what's
what element?
easier? Is it easier to get every guy in? We talked about this early on, doing some hands-on testing. We know that's very, very expensive. How many people would want to leave their shop? How many people would want to spend that type of money? This could be an alternative, and we got to think about different ways.
And how do you
Chris.
make the testing fair? You know,
That's pretty tough.
testing,
Yeah.
you know,
It
that,
is.
these things are all the obstacles. For example, in testing, if one guy or shop is maybe not even just GM, but say they're only Chevy, or they only do GMC, so they're doing trucks. So their experience is a little different. How do you make that test fair when this other place does only, you know, smaller passenger cars, and then the other place does only limos, or does a bigger percentage, and then you start getting into the different marketing, you know, European, American, or Asian markets, which have technical differences between the vehicles that make it hard to do the testing.
Yeah, this is true. I mean,
They're all
it's,
different.
There's gonna be a lot of.
A lot of stuff there.
There's a lot.
it's tough, but you know, there are some good companies that I've seen that make different type of test boards. Some of them are a part of a car that, in other words, everyone would get the same type
Right.
of brake job to do or
Right.
diagnostics to do. It is super tough, but let's look at electronics on a lot of the cars. You know, the German cars sell a lot of the stuff to the Asian. And some Asian stuff is also used on domestic. It's not as different as when we went back to CIS days, let's say, of
CIS,
The-
I hated that system.
now that was big, that was super big. If you worked on domestic cars and had to jump from a carburetor over to that,
You didn't know what
you
were
didn't
on.
know what you were doing and vice
Right.
versa. So nowadays I think stuff is closer, and maybe if there was something like a test board, electrical that we do or whatever with the ATS, Automotive Training Test Solutions Board, ATS,
Yeah, the
that at
E-train-
least
the
is,
E-trainer board.
yeah, that's at least standardized.
Right,
But now you would have to kind of come up with something that's kind of fair to everyone.
in a mechanical sense.
I think keeping the ASC written test is still a good thing. It's a
Yeah, I
good
think
base.
so too. Yep,
Because you do have to know something, and if you're good in that field, like you said earlier, you go through the test, and I've
blow through it.
recertified auto, truck, and school bus, and most of the time in the old 4-hour block have done all 16 tests in one night. You know, research, because I knew the information. Now, if you don't know it, of course, it's a lot harder,
Right.
and that makes it different.
And
So,
research, for those of you who don't know, research are half the number of questions that the original certification was.
yeah.
I think that's a general rule, or is that always the case? Always, is it always half the number of tests, questions on a research?
You know, I never count them. I think it's considerably less.
Yeah, yeah,
At least
right.
half to.
Something like that.
I mean, maybe a
If it's
handful.
50, it's like 16.
We're getting so
Yeah.
many comments and questions, it's hard to keep up. Some people say educate your customer. Well, we
Yeah,
already
that's a
have
big part of
that.
it. We try that.
What does it do?
Educate the customers, yeah.
Gonzo has a good thing here for someone to check shops, it has to be a mechanic, which brings up a good thing to me. Yes, to go in and use that Zagat type of,
Yeah, it has to be a peer. It has to be
rating
somebody who's
system.
knowledgeable in the business, or they will
And-
not be able to
and what
do
you
it.
can do is you can take a council of people. You know, California does this with book review, because I know I submitted many books out there. They will get good college instructors and stuff that they know have been doing stuff for years to rate something. Now you would have to get some sort of board or council like that to do the same thing for an area.
Right.
You know, and people would probably have to go out of their area, because we do know sometimes there's a competition problem, which is ridiculous, but that's the way the real world is.
People get territorial.
You would have to take someone out of the picture where they would have to be able to travel. And by the way, we did this at the school, Pierre,
Yeah,
with
that's
ASE
right.
certification
Right.
for the BOSI school that
Right.
we sit on the board for.
Right.
So they do take people from out of the area, they come in, they see if it met the criteria. This may be something else we can look at. Okay.
Yeah. Any other comments? There's probably a lot of them there.
Oh, yeah, I'm trying to go through.
Jerry's reading
The ones
comments.
that
but-
are,
The main question is, where would you start? Where would you go? Who would you talk to?
That's why we're having this discussion.
Yeah, you know, I don't know. I wish there was a easy answer here, everyone.
Right.
We definitely appreciate any thoughts or
You know,
comments.
what I'd like to hear back from you guys is basically, you know, your thoughts. Because I've thought about this licensing for years. Many people approach me for years doing different classes, different places. We usually felt that ASE was the best thing, and I still think they're very good. I think ASE, as we mentioned before, or maybe it was Gonzo, they have their foot in the door already.
Yeah,
That's great.
And they're a name that's out there. The whole country knows what, or at least has seen the. They may not know what it is, but they've seen the logo, and they know it has to do with technician qualification.
Right, and why reinvent the wheel, but let's put, as someone put there before, not sure if it was Gonzo or someone else, let's put more teeth in it. Maybe we could even get help, and this is kind of pushing it, Scott, but from IATN, you know, or maybe put a poll up on IATN, and I think you've done that in the past, I think I've seen that. But, you know, I think at this point, it's time for us to push the envelope harder to make some sort of move towards mandatory licensing.
Some noise.
But think about it very carefully to where we don't get caught up in all the government bureaucracy that we've had in the past on different things.
Yeah, that's the snare right there.
So, you know, we just come give you ideas. This round table was just one of our, hey, it's time to maybe bring this up idea.
Yeah. Plus, we like to stir up a hornet's nest every once in a while. How are we doing?
We don't want to leave all the fun to IATN.
Yeah, that's right.
There are some downsides to get licensed too.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, lots of
yeah.
downsides.
Yeah, you could lose your shop.
That's
If you
it.
don't have a license to do something, then you're trying to find people to work.
Yeah, you can't
They
find
don't
people.
have them, and
And
then
that's a big
And they
nut.
demand a lot of money and do a lousy job anyway because they're not really that good. That can be there can be all kinds of snares, problems with this whole
There
idea.
is.
The idea is, we've all seen it, we've all been upset by it, the uneven quality and the outright lack of quality in parts of the industry, and how it affects all of us, day to day, all the time, constantly.
But isn't that in everything? You can go
Oh,
to
yeah.
the best college in the world, you can barely get through, and then here's the guy who's way up top. You don't know the difference between either one of them until
That's
you
right.
use them.
Yeah, that's right.
It could be the same problem we have here, but
Right.
I think we just need to move to a better step, because one of the things why STS and now TST for how many years, 10 plus
Gotta
years,
be
whatever
10
it is.
plus, yeah.
You know, why we do this, we give a rat's butt for technicians, for you guys,
Right.
and we're trying to make it better. And this is something that we think is some sort of an idea to get to the next thing. Definitely not our first idea. It was many people out there, as we've seen before. But we thought it was time to stir it up. And that's exactly what we did.
And
So-
he's allergic to the bees, so you gotta, you know, you don't want to stir up too many hornets' nests.
it's been a bar.
Me, I've been stung a few times.
But, you know, not to belabor this thing here, we'd like to thank you. This is our new system. We're testing a few of them. We do have some stuff coming up we'd like to remind you. First thing coming up is this Thursday night. Well, I guess it's the same night my buddy Wayne is on. Well, two things this Thursday night. Go to Powertrain Pro, the Motor Age website. That's on June 20th at 8 p.m. See my good buddy Wayne Colonna. Wayne will be doing the first Motor Age webcast. Please sign in to see them. We had Wayne on our webcast. If you missed it, we're running behind. It should be on YouTube probably in the next week or so. We're just behind on all the stuff we have to do. Also on Thursday night, I believe that is the 20th as well, at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, I will be, Pierre and I will be doing the Snap-on 12.4 version software, and we'll be connecting that to a car. We'll give you different information about looking at PIDs, bi-directional control, whole bunch of stuff. We get a lot of requests for that. We do thank Snap-on for sending in the software. We're sorry it took so late to do this webcast, but that's one of the things we also have coming up. And then we have the OTC Genesis Touch somewhere near the end of the month. Look for our new emails. They look way better than before to me. We always like your opinion, and we hope to see you back on the next TST thing. Guys,
And,
thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
And thank you out there.